Welcome to the Under 8 Podcast, a daily college basketball show brought to you every weekday in under 8 minutes. At the time of recording, it is Tuesday, December 19th, 11:02 p.m. My name is Josh Mullenix. On today's pod, the Memphis Tigers keep on rolling. A double overtime marathon at the Jumpman Invitational and Big East play is underway. It's all right now on the Under 8 Podcast. Josh Doering is here with me. Not a great start to Big East play for the number 6 Marquette Golden Eagles. If I am correct in my quick glance at last year's KenPom page, the Golden Eagles, they eclipsed 60 points in all of their conference games last year. In game one at Providence, it's a 72-57 loss for Shaka Smart's team. They shoot 32% from the field, 4 of 20 from the three-point line, and Cam Jones fouled more three-point shooters than three-pointers. He made not a great night for Shaka Smart's team.
And the last one was Bryce Hopkins.
I
mean, yeah, it was so un-Marquette-like, from the bad decision-making, both turnovers and fouling three-point shooters consistently, to the lack of cohesion offensively. Defensively, they weren't particularly good. And Providence just made them pay. For whatever reason, Marquette cannot figure out this matchup. It just seems like Providence always gives them trouble. I think that's now 45 of 48 wins at home for Providence, something like that they said in the broadcast. And that new guy on the sideline knows how to coach. We've been saying that from day one. Not that anybody disagreed with that, considering Kim English's trajectory and where he's already at in his coaching career. But that's a good team that's had a good start to the season, and you got to show up to win in that building, and Marquette did.
That's a very true statement. It's a really tough place to play. And I said to you in text earlier tonight, I didn't expect Marquette to look like they only had one guy on the floor that was really ready for Big East play. And that was Tyler Kolek. And you said, it's a tough place to play. And you're absolutely right. It's a very tough place to play. And if you're not locked in for Big East play, if you're not ready, then starting on the road at Providence is about the worst place that you can start if you're not totally prepared mentally for what you're getting on the road in the Big East. And they just didn't communicate that. Like I said, Tyler Kolek, 21 points, 7 of 15 from the field, had 9 rebounds, 5 assists to 3 turnovers. The only other Golden Eagle with more than 2 field goals was Cam Jones. He was only 5 of 14, though. So not only was it, the peripheral offensive contributions that you usually see from Marquette, and that pretty balanced attack also wasn't there. And when that's not there, and Providence has a decent night from the field, makes 11 3-pointers, you're probably not going to beat them very many times in their own building.
No. And the big takeaway for me here is something we discussed in a different context earlier in the season. And I was thinking about this morning, reading, I believe it was friend of the pod, CJ Moore, who wrote the profile on Oso Ighodaro for The Athletic. You and I are as big Tyler Kolek fans as anybody outside of the people who actually know and care about him.
Huge Tyler Kolek fan.
Oso Ighodaro is the most important player on that team. For their offense to work the way that it does, and to be a top 5 offense in the country, it has to run through him. It has to be him and Kolek in the pick and roll. I think there were 2 of them in this game where Ighodaro got dunks. But every time Kolek was going right, they didn't get anything out of it. There were only 3 or 4 instances where you went, oh, that's what Marquette's supposed to look like, where Kolek actually got into the lane, made something happen. It was so much one-on-one from Kolek and Ighodaro, and Kolek can do that. He had a good game, like you said. He's got over 20 points. He can get his buckets when he needs to. But if Iguodala gets in foul trouble, if he doesn't show up and he gets taken out of a game like this, it's not just him. It's also the way their offense flows. And the other problem is, especially when Stevie Mitchell isn't available, they don't have other guys who are going to go get 15 or 20 points outside of Cam Jones and Tyler Kolek, which is normally fine. But it's not fine when you're playing Providence, who has 4 guys, because Ticket Gaines hit more threes by himself in the first half than Marquette did. And Devin Carter then took over in the second half. And Josh Oduro was good. And of course you have Bryce Hopkins, who wasn't even particularly impactful in this game, and it didn't matter. Providence has depth. Marquette has a bunch of guys who fit into their roles really well, but I'm just not. If Iguodala isn't dominant and isn't impactful, I don't know how they compensate for that against other really good teams that have guards who, on this particular day at least, were able to match what Marquette got out of the backcourt.
Jumping way too far ahead, but we might be staring, after Providence wins this game, their next 5 are Butler, Seton Hall, Creighton, St. John's, Xavier, DePaul, Seton Hall, Georgetown. That was way more. I just kept going because the streak was even. Like, we could mess around and see Providence. You're on the road at Creighton. Maybe you expect that to be a loss. You're on the road at St. John's, but your other away games are DePaul and Seton Hall, and neither one of them have looked particularly awesome. St. John's hasn't looked great either. If you get something similar to what you got from Providence on this particular night, we could be deep into January, and Providence being in the conversation for the very tippity top of the Big East could be a very real conversation. So very interesting, what they might be able to parlay this into when they start with a win like this.
We kept saying we think this conference has 4 teams. We both thought it was Villanova. Maybe it's Providence.
Maybe so. Memphis, number 23 in this week's AP poll, taking on number 22, Virginia. The Tigers, 77-54. For those not paying too close attention to Penny Hardaway's squad, the Tigers are now up to 26th at KenPom. They have beat VCU, Texas A&M, Clemson, and now Virginia in their last 4 games. Virginia coming into this game was a top 30 KenPom team, so that's 3 straight wins against top 30 KenPom teams going into the game. Virginia now 38th after the loss. The Tigers might be for real, and after the new year, after the next semester begins, in theory, they're going to get even better.
Yeah. I made this point before coming out of whichever was that, Battle for Atlantis. Yeah. And David Jones was excellent in this game. David Jones was a problem in the Big East. They have collected some guys who could play at the high major level, and specifically a trio of guys who have performed at a high level, at the high major level. This is an incredibly talented. Now, it's not the first one Penny's had, certainly not the first one Memphis has had, but this is an incredibly talented team that should be top 25 based on paper. And they're going to have some weird losses probably, because that's just kind of how they do things. But they've
already got them. They've already got weird losses.
Right. They're already doing this again. But you line them up with anybody in the country, they got a shot. They have the talent to play with anybody. And
David Jones. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, they're certainly better than Virginia when Virginia has this many offensive issues. So
David Jones, last 5 games, 4 coming against high major opponents. 22 points, 23 points, 29 points, 22 points, and then 26 tonight. He's 37 of 43 from the stripe in that stretch, getting to the line over and over and over again. That's a top 20 scorer in the country right now. 20.3 points per game. He's also grabbing 6.5 rebounds. 45% from the field isn't awesome, but also when you're taking 14 shots a game, that's certainly serviceable. His 3-point shooting is up from 29.4% on 2 attempts per game last year to, sorry, that's free throw. My bad. No, wait, 4.6%, 4.6 attempts per game up to 6.5, and he's bumped up that percentage from 29 to 38.5%. The Tigers have a very real primary score that they can go to every night, and he was rolling on this particular night. And like you said, this is a Virginia team that looks very similar to the ones that are not capable of winning national titles. The one that did is still different, not the same thing. This is a very good defensive team that's going to have nights where they score 54 points against other good basketball teams.
It's the fifth time in 7 games they've scored fewer than 60. They won
That's
some of
tough.
them. Not all of them, but some of them been against good teams. Some of them haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Either they're going to hold you to under 60 or they're probably going to have some issues. And unless they are spectacular defensively, which so far they've been at that level, at least you could argue that. If it slips that for even a little bit, or if you just pick the wrong night and the other team makes shots and makes plays and you just don't have it, this is what's going to happen.
The Tigers keep right on rolling, 77-50 for the top 25 team there in Memphis. Last but not least, there was a game that went way longer than it probably needed to at the Jumpman Invitational. Florida Gators 106, Michigan 101. 22 points off the bench for Zion Pullen, 21 points in the starting lineup from Tyrese Samuel. That was leading the charge for the Gators. You got 33 points from Doug McBuckets, Doug McDaniel, 33, 8 and 5, but wasn't quite enough for the Wolverines. They fall to 6 and 6 on the year.
Yeah. There isn't really too much to discuss here. This is just a game between two teams that are kind of in a similar spot, which means they both really could have used this win. And they kind of just went back and forth until Florida eventually made the plays to win. The couple things. Michigan shot the ball well. It's really disappointing to lose when you shoot that well. But they got cleaned out on the glass. They got dominated in the interior, and that's how Florida made up for the 3-point discrepancy. But we've talked about this with Florida before, that they usually just find a way to lose these games. Right? They have these weird, it's one of these 50-50. Well, they could win that one, but also you wouldn't be shocked if they lose it. It seems like they come out on the wrong end of those more than they should based on their talent. So to get this one is a nice confidence boost because they're already falling into that trend again this season with losing to teams like Wake Forest.
And they have two like they could pretty easily be not like 10 and 1. They lose to Virginia by 3, they lose to Baylor by 4. Like we're not all that far away from this being a really nice resume. And at the same time, you look and you watch them play and you understand, yeah, I can see why they have trouble closing games against high major opponents.
Yeah. Yeah. These are the kind of games that may ultimately determine their NCAA tournament fate. Because they'll win some in the SEC, they'll lose some in the SEC. But it's those swing games that could go either way that get you from 500 to a couple games over 500, and that's probably enough with how good the SEC is going to be, plus with the fact that their non-conference has gone fine. They get a win like this. Yeah, Michigan, again, the defensive issues.
You should never lose a game where you go 10 of 22 from the 3-point line.
No.
And also win the charity stripe battle.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. There were just flaws for both of these teams. It made for good entertainment. I mean, neither of them were going to let the other one. Well, neither of them were going to eliminate the other from this game, essentially.
Yeah.
Is what I was going for there. It's like they were very, very evenly matched, and ultimately somebody had to win, and we just played until we got to that point.
Yes, two flawed teams. That one team had their flaws had to shine just a little brighter, and the other team was going to win. Anything else on that one before we get out of here?
No, not on that one. I do want to say a couple of things. I'm not worried about Marquette. I think they're going to be fine. I'm not going to overreact to that loss. And then the other one, IU, close call. But Notre Dame lost at home by 20 to the Citadel.
The powerhouse, the
Eh,
Citadel. Trivia time. Where's the Citadel in at Ken Palm?
oh, geez. 223.
217. Trivia time part 2. Is the Citadel higher or lower than Notre Dame at Ken Palm?
Lower, but
Oh,
not by much.
they are higher than Notre
Are they
Dame at
really?
Ken Palm. Notre Dame is 226. Now,
Well,
granted, they were 183rd, 83 coming into the game. That's impressive. Dropping 30 spots at Ken Palm, 40 spots at Ken Palm is impressive.
I mean, you
But
can't
losing to
argue
the
with that.
Citadel at home by 20 will do that
Right.
for you.
Can't argue it after that result. I mean, another day we can talk about Mike Shrewsbury's decision to take the Notre Dame job because I do really like him and I think he's a really good coach. There was just a lot of work there to do. It's rough in South Bend right now.
Really, really rough. Really, really rough. That's going to do it for the Under 8 podcast, Tuesday, December 19th. It is 11:18 p.m. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your shows. Follow the Under 8 pod on Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here, and we will talk to you then.